Okay, we are now recording. Welcome everyone. Welcome, happy Friday. Mile High Connects is excited to host Myra Gonzalez and Mari Cruz Herrera of Montbello Organizing Committee today to present to you all some of the experience that they have in mobilizing their community prior to COVID and as COVID has really ravished many of our communities. I want to bring everyone into the space and ask everyone to introduce themselves before we get started. What we'd like to ask you to do is unmute yourselves. If you're comfortable with it, put yourself on video. Say your name, the organization that you're with, if that applies, where you're calling in from, and what brings you here today. So with that, I'm going to go in alphabetical order by first name. Let's see here. Oh, how about Joyce Brooks? Would you like to start?
I'm Joyce Brooks from Coloradans for the Common Good and NAACP, Colorado. And I'm here because I got invited.
Great answer. Nice to have you here, Joyce. And let's see, trying to get back here to the participants. How about Maya?
Hello, my name is Maya Thomas. I'm with the Facts Partnership here in Denver, and I'm here because I appreciate organizations having necessary conversations.
Thank you, Maya. Welcome. How about Kevin?
Hey, thanks, Maggie. Nice to meet everyone. I'm Kevin from the community team at Lyft, based here in the Denver area, and yeah, excited to learn from you all today. Thanks for having me.
Great, thank you. I've got Paul here.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here. I'm with the Center for Community Wealth Building. I do cooperative development there, and I'm just excited to celebrate the success that has been happening at Montbello.
Nice, thank you. David?
Hi, I'm David Portillo with the Denver Foundation, calling in from Denver. I'm excited with the work in Montbello with all the groups and would love to hear the story of how it began and what's happening now.
Thank you, David. Katie McKenna.
Hi, I'm Katie McKenna. I'm from Enterprise Community Partners and huge fans of Mock and Myra and Mara Cruz, and so really excited to hear from you all.
Thank you, Katie. Laya?
Here. Hi, I'm Laya Mitchell with the Gates Family Foundation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah, okay, great.
Yes.
I have the phone and the computer and I'm like having a little bit of tech, I don't know, personal crisis.
No worries.
Anyway, happy to be here. I'm with the Gates Family Foundation. Already hugely respect the work of Mock and Myra and Mari Cruz and happy to just learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Laya. Mo?
Hi everyone, I'm Mo McCanna with Bicycle Colorado. Maggie, I have to say your energy is like starting a yoga class. Like I'm ready to just like start doing downward dog, but I enjoy it. I'm excited to be here and continue learning from Mock and the folks who directly serve residents in far northeast Denver. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mo. Naomi?
Maggie, you inspired me, and me too. Between that and what Mo said, I feel very relaxed right now, right? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Naomi Amaha-Golnick. I'm with the American Heart Association, and I'm really excited, yes, to learn about Mock and all of the amazing things happening in Montbello. So thank you for putting this on.
Thank you, Naomi. Nick?
Hi, I am Nick Collins. I work for Strong, Prosperous, and Resilient Communities Challenge, or SPARK, also for Low Income Investment Fund. I'm located in Oakland, California, so I was invited on the call to just sort of hear from the SPARK perspective and look for how we can help communicate and lift up what's happening in Denver, the really awesome stuff happening. So just want to thank you all for letting me be in this space as a non-Denverite, and just grateful to be here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Nick, and thank you for bringing some spark energy to this conversation. Dea, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Dea Zavala, Executive Director of Mile High Connects, and in my capacity today, serving as technical support. So, hi, everyone.
Thank you, Dea. And I believe I've met everyone, but I am Maggie Lee with Mile High Connects, calling from Northwest Denver. And I am here today because I organized this, but I'm also very interested in hearing deep details about the work that the ladies of Montbello Organizing Committee do in terms of mobilizing, engaging, and organizing community. With that, I wanted to have Dea give a little bit of a history on the relationship between Mile High Connects and Montbello Organizing Committee. So I'll turn it over to her briefly, and then I'm going to introduce the panelists for today.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Maggie, and the entire mock crew for just coming together for this session. I'm really excited, I think, as everyone has shared in your introductions. The history of Mile High Connects and Montbello Organizing Committee really goes back to our initial support of Montbello Organizing and seeing the power that we all know to be true, that communities know the responses that they need. Communities have the power, communities have the knowledge, communities have the experience. And so really Mile High Connects first became engaged with Montbello Organizing Committee in partnership with the Denver Foundation Strengthening Neighborhoods to basically launch this entity, to launch and support the work. And we are constantly and always amazed by where they go and the directions and the heights that they lead. Montbello Organizing Committee officially became a member of the Mile High Connect Steering Committee back in 2017. And again, part of that had to do with the fact that we recognized that the only way for us to really make change in our region was by coming together and supporting this initiative and really lifting it up as systems change work. And so with that, I'm happy to announce that Mile High Connects recently granted additional support to Mile High Connects, to Montbello Organizing Committee in support of the Fresh Low initiative, because again, we really believe in the power of this project and the power of communities in being able to self-determine what they need to make community wealth building and to make a prosperous, resilient Denver happen. So with that, I'm gonna turn it back over to Maggie to kick us off. So thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, Dea. And I actually learned a few things that are being newer to Mile High Connects, so thank you. I wanted to start this with a quick excerpt from Muse, the publication that Montbello Organizing Committee publishes on I think a bi-monthly basis. Yeah, okay. So I highly recommend, and I will drop the link in the chat to their Muse publications. They're very good reads. I wanted to lift up the executive director, Donna Garnett's voice into this space from an article that's called This is What Community Looks Like. She opens the article with, in the midst of a pandemic and social unrest, Montbello is a resilient community. No matter the challenge, we are a community that comes together to tackle the big issues. Despite many losses to our neighborhood, and regardless of larger outside institutions not always following through on commitments, we are listening to and taking care of our own. And that is exactly the work of Mari Cruz, Myra, and Kiera. And I wanna start by introducing you all to Myra Gonzalez. She collaborates with the Montbello Fresh Low community partners on the design, planning, and activation of the Montbello Fresh Low walkable loop. Myra is a graduate of the University of Colorado Denver's Master of Urban and Regional Planning program, otherwise known as MERP, and she combines her passion for community, organizing, housing, food access, and transportation planning within this role. Myra is also a resident of the Vecinos de Montbello, RNO. Welcome, Myra. And Mari Cruz Herrera is a community engagement specialist with MOC. She has a long history of community organizing and is well represented for her ability to bring together diverse stakeholders to work on issues of education, immigrant and refugee rights. And refugee rights, seniors, transportation, and small business development. She has consulted with the Denver Foundation, the Colorado Trust, and the Latino Community Foundation. She is also the co-founder and president of Colorado Change Makers Collective. And lastly, unfortunately, Kiera Jackson, the Montbello Organizing Committee's project manager, could not be here with us today, but I wanted to make sure you all know about her. Kiera manages many of MOC's programs, including all of the education initiatives. She has spent most of her career serving the Montbello community through her political work and activism, as well as involvement in faith-based community and education work as a former Denver Public Schools employee. She is also passionate about building Black, Indigenous, and people of color's wealth by supporting small businesses and growing their capacity to thrive. So we have a great lineup for you all today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Myra and Mari Cruz. Thank you. Oh, one more thing I should say is if you have any questions or you have any comments throughout the session, we will have a specific section for questions, but we're open to you all continuing to comment throughout the session in the chat box. We'll be monitoring that. Myra and Mari Cruz, please take it away.
Yeah, thank you. We're super excited to be here with you all and share the work that we do at MOC. I'm going to share my screen. We have a very simple presentation, and it's just more to accompany our voices with some images, we also wanted to get to know the folks who are here with us. And so we'll be talking about the way that we do community organizing, mobilizing, engagement, especially right now in the times of COVID, but also before that. I think I'll be probably going through most of this, and then Mari Cruz is going to jump in with a lot of the examples and stories. Normally, Mari Cruz feels really comfortable or feels comfortable, communicating in English and Spanish. Spanish is her first language, and so if she feels that she feels more comfortable saying it in Spanish, she'll say that in Spanish, and then I'll just interpret for her. And this is something that we do in the office all the time, especially, and it's a really interesting dynamic because she and I are the only Spanish speakers and everybody else is a native English speaker. And so it has really, not only taught us how to communicate, but also, to start learning and picking up on those little pieces. And so sometimes we get carried away and start speaking in Spanish, and then we have to come back and translate for Kiara, who's learning Spanish. So that's been really fun. But I did want to preface this presentation and just let you all know that we'll be doing that. And it's something that's very natural for us in our office and in the way that we work. So we want to interact with you all and get to know you all a little bit better. And so we have just 4 questions that we'll be asking you. And so if you're on your computer, you can pull out your phone. This is the, I think the one time it'll be acceptable to be on our phones, but you can text my name, Mayra Gonzalez, 937 to 22333, and it'll send you a message saying that you're in this room and that it is accepting responses. And the first question that we wanted to ask you all is, what does community engagement mean to you? And so we'll take a couple of minutes to let folks send in their responses to that.
Can you reshare your screen? I didn't quite get what I was supposed to text written.
So it is
Same.
going to be my name, Mayra Gonzalez. Let me pull that up again.
And I think in the text on the screen, there might be an S missing at the end of your name.
Oh, you know what? That's what the what their system kicked out to me. So
Oh,
Mayra
okay.
Gonzalez.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can text as many times as you want. It's a word cloud. It'll be creating a word cloud. And so the more times a word is shared, the bigger that word becomes. And we'll just take one more minute here. But as we're submitting our responses, I do want to call out the bigger words that are coming up: listening, power, feedback, people, leaders. These are, the one word that comes to mind when you all think of community engagement. And something that I will call out is that I use community engagement and community organizing interchangeably. I know that they're two different things, and we'll be talking about that as we move on in this presentation. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. And this one is, how do you engage with the community? And so maybe it's the geographic area that you're in, maybe it's a specific population group. How do you engage with them specifically? And it will be the same process. You just keep sending responses to that message.
It's telling me that the poll is not active.
Same.
How about now?
It's the response I'm getting says poll does not support text message responses.
Huh, that's fine. Then we won't dwell in that. If folks want to add that to the chat, I think that we can just move over to the chat if folks want to share their responses there. So the question was, how do you engage with the community? And so Maggie, if you want, I'm looking at it, and so I can start reading some of
Sounds
what
good.
the folks are saying. But listening sessions, co-planning, I know technology is a great tool if you can use it. And then when it doesn't do what you want it to do. Co-planning authentically, getting into the community, listening to their needs and concerns, meeting them in their neighborhood, meeting people where they're at. A lot of folks saying go where the people are, attend larger events and listen, fund on the ground organizing, social media engagement. And so we'll just take 30 more seconds on this one. Oh, thank you. And so then the next question is, how much time does your group or organization dedicate to community organizing or community engagement specifically? David is saying not enough. Maggie, most of our time. Some folks seconding David, not enough time. Others, it's their largest department. Some folks, their partnership leads most of their local community engagement. But I think some of the sentiment is that it's still not enough. And so we'll just take a couple more seconds there, but I'll have folks start shifting mindsets to our final question, which is, how important is community engagement to the work of your specific groups or organizations? David, it's the key to most of the strengthening neighborhood success. Some folks are saying it's important, it's critical. Without the community engagement, you couldn't understand unmet needs. You wouldn't be activating people power. And so these questions, Maricruz and I and Kiara will sit around the table in the office, and we'll be asking ourselves these questions almost every single day. We'll ask ourselves these questions as they relate to the different projects or tasks that we have underway. If we have a community event that we're planning, we think about community engagement. If we're trying to find out what the community would like to see in our specific projects, we're asking ourselves these questions, and that is one way that we're able to go into our work. And so we'll just take let's say 20 more seconds to get those responses in. Some folks are saying that community engagement is essential. It's the only way we have any political power for some groups. We can't be successful driving systemic change without community engagement. It's critical to better understand the needs and strengths of everyone they want to serve. Maggie said, we can't really understand the issues and their root causes if we don't hear from those who are impacted. And all of those things are so true for you all and also for us. And so for us, community engagement is super important. And I'll just go back for folks who might not know who the Montbello Organizing Committee is. We got started back in 2014. We are all, I would categorize us as a grassroots resident-led organization. We were started thanks to a grant that we received from the Denver Foundation and Live Well. I was our first community organizer back in the day, and a lot of the work that came to be and that I was engaging in back in the day came to be because we lost our only grocery store. As a community, we saw the sudden closure of our only Safeway, and we really felt the pressure around food access and the fact that we had become a food desert, what felt like overnight. And I shared the story that I pulled up to the Safeway gas station, and I'm getting out of my car, and I realized that the tanks, the pumps, they're boarded up. And so it felt like one day to another. We didn't really know what was happening, but the community got together. I remember the first meeting I attended was with over, 150 people. It was organized at one of our local churches, the United Church of Montbello, and the leaders came together. They organized a turkey and tamales event. And so they really wanted to reach out to the entire community. Montbello, for those of you who don't know, is in the far northeast area of Denver. We are primarily a Latino community. We are historically we were an African-American community. And for a lot of us, the sentiment of being underserved and represented, continues on. And so the community has been organizing around different issues and in different ways. We have very strong RNOs out here. Some of you who work out in this area or who do work in this area will know that you can't do a lot without everybody finding out because, we all talk to each other. We work very collaboratively out in the community. And that's how we found out about the grocery store. And we found out so quickly because everybody is so connected and everybody is so passionate out here. And one thing that we wanted to do as MOC was bring up community-led solutions. And so at that meeting, we identified 3 issues that we felt we could have the capacity to address. Food access was one of those. Transportation was another. This was before the commuter rail, the Colorado A line, before its opening to the airport from Union Station to the airport. This was, before we had a Save-A-Lot out here. I think it was right before Walmart, the neighborhood Walmart even came in. And education always rose to the top as well. And so we picked just 3 things that we thought that as a community group we could tackle. And from that, we've been following that same model every year since then. We'll host a big community meeting. We'll ask folks, are we still on the right path? What are the issues that are coming up in the community? What are things that we should tackle, and how are ways that we can do that? And so we've shifted our model. We used to have resident task teams, and so we would organize and engage residents. We would build their capacity. We would do one-on-one trainings and community organizer trainings, how to conduct one-on-ones, how to build power, how to escalate situations. And I just remember, all the battles that we had with our TD. Over the bus routes that we were losing. And so we have since then shifted the way that we work, and we'll be sharing what we're doing currently here in a second. But all of this to say that our model for engagement has been evolving and it has been changing over the years, from a more traditional community organizing, mobilizing masses of, mass groups of people for specific issues, to what we're doing now. And so, Maricruz, can you help me by speaking about the community response and our work in addressing COVID and like the emergency response work that we've been doing?
Claro que sí. Buenas tardes. Como bien dice Mayra, nuestra dinámica de trabajo siempre es así. Apenas empezamos español, terminamos en inglés y a veces hasta otro idioma que no nos entendemos, pero es la manera que trabajamos en la oficina. Gracias por apoyarme en esto, Mayra. Y solo quiero simplificar un poco lo que estamos haciendo ahora. No estábamos preparados para la epidemia. Yo creo que nadie, definitivamente, cuando nos llegó fue como una manera solamente de reaccionar y trabajar. Entonces tuvimos un tiempo en cual solamente nos sentábamos a decir, ¿qué vamos a hacer? ¿Qué tenemos que hacer? No teníamos guía, no teníamos una manera de trabajar. Todo se nos había complicado un poco. Te dejo para que lo digas.
Yeah, and so Maricruz is saying, thank you. This is what we do in the office. We'll switch languages, between meetings. But our work in the community, especially now during the pandemic, it was unexpected. We weren't expecting this. We weren't prepared for it. We had so many projects that were taking place that it just felt everything was very disrupted, because whatever path we were on, we had to quickly readjust and react. And so we went from feeling like we were very proactive to very reactive.
Así es, recuerdo la vez que nos sentamos en la oficina y todos nos quedamos como, ¿qué vamos a hacer ahora? Tenemos que hacer tenemos el proyecto para Fresh Flow, tenemos que recolectar las encuestas de la comunidad, y en esta epidemia nos poníamos a pensar, ¿y quién tiene tiempo para hacer un survey basado a estas necesidades? ¿Quién va a tener tiempo para hacer quedarse y hacer esto que queremos hacer? Y necesitamos esas respuestas. Así que lo que hicimos fue apoyar de la manera que nos estaban diciendo. Nos estaban diciendo, ¿saben qué? En este momento tenemos hambre. En este momento tenemos necesidades básicas. Necesitamos que nos apoyen en esta área. Así que nosotros lo que hicimos fue apoyarlos en esta área y trabajar más allá de lo que siempre hacíamos. Entonces, empezamos a trabajar en el banco de comida, apoyando a la comunidad el tiempo que sea. Recuerdo muy bien desde que empezamos, así como ven en esas fotos que tienen ustedes, eso fue lo que nos tocaba. Me recuerdo tener el pelo congelado, lleno de escarcha, pero aún así continuábamos apoyando a la gente, aún así estábamos ahí porque sabíamos que era una necesidad y que tenemos que apoyar en esta área.
So when the pandemic hit, we all sat around our boardroom table and we started asking ourselves questions like, what are we going to do and how are we going to do the work? Something that we were working on at the time was a community survey for our Fresh Flow project. And we were asking, how are we, one, going to go out and ask people these questions? And two, who has the time or energy to even respond to something like a survey right now? And so what we did was readjusted, and we started to listen to what the community was saying. The community was telling us that they were hungry, that they had basic needs that needed to be met. And so we went back to the drawing board and we said, we're going to go out there and we're going to do what the community is asking us to do. And so one of those things, and the images in front of you are of the mobile food pantry that the Food Bank of the Rockies does in Montbello. The image to the left is of one of those freezing cold winter days. This was at the beginning of the year. You know, February, March, the snow was still coming down, and Maricruz remembers our hair being frozen. And just the sentiment of we're going to be out here meeting the needs of the community for as long as it takes and however that looks. And if it means, you know, we're out here freezing, many times we were out there in the freezing cold or in the rain, serving the needs of the community. And something that she didn't mention was that we started to use these opportunities of meeting the needs of the community as vehicles for us to engage with the community. And so at these food banks, you know, as we mentioned, we had to do a survey. Our goal was to reach out to 300 individuals to ask them about the Montbello Fresh Flow project, had they heard about it, and what their thoughts were, what their dreams were for this space and this building. And Maricruz and her team, they reached out to over 300 folks. At the end of 1 month, we ended up collecting over 500 survey responses for this specific project. And it's because we took the time to meet the needs of the community. And then it was through that work that we were able to then go ahead and carry out the other work that we were needing to do for our projects that were already on that pipeline. And so we started to marry the two. I think folks, you know, sometimes when something unprecedented happens, you're not planning for it, it really derails you, and it gets really hard to do the work that you were doing. For us, you know, collecting a survey in normal times would have meant that we're meeting folks outside of grocery stores, we're meeting folks out in the community, we're talking to them one-on-one. Because of COVID, we couldn't do that anymore. But because we had this new vehicle where we were able to do things in a safe manner, we were able to, you know, stay protected, wear masks, people were in their cars, we had barriers protecting us, we were able to communicate and engage with the community that way. And so right now our work consists of continuing to move forward on our Fresh Flow project, which is a mixed use development here in the Montbello community. It will be anchored by a grocery store, a cultural hub, some community space, some space for retail, and 96 units of affordable housing. And this is something that has been in the works since one of those early meetings in 2015, where we knew that we needed a place for a new grocery store. We needed to have access to fresh food that was accessible by cost. Over the years, we've seen gentrification really flip our neighborhoods. And so we decided that housing was an important issue that we needed to take on. And the Fresh Flow Hub provided an opportunity for us to address different needs in the community under one building. And so we've taken on these massive projects, you know, before COVID and even now, we've been able to adjust and redirect our energy to make sure that we're still meeting the needs of the community and that we're still engaging them and mobilizing them to whatever it is that's coming up for the community. Another thing that's really important to us is that we don't do community engagement on our own. We truly believe in the power of collaboration. And so we really work with different community partners. As I mentioned before, Montbello is a really tight-knit community. You can't do a lot of things in Montbello without us all finding out. And that's because we talk to each other. We all work really closely to each other, and we have very strong relationships with each other. And so part of the work that MOC does is not only build the capacity of the community, but we're building the capacity and supporting our partner organizations. Maricruz and I wear different hats. As Maggie mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, Maricruz is the director of the Colectiva Creando Cambios, the CCC, and she works with 13 other smaller organizations building their capacity to serve as local nonprofits. They're different enterprises, maybe they have different projects, but together we're able to serve the greater Montbello community. And so we've been supporting other food access projects like the Struggle of Love Foundation, they have a program called Sacks of Love where they deliver, they do a food distribution every single day out here in Montbello. And together we're feeding thousands of people. At each one of our mobile food pantries, we're serving at least 1,500 folks. So that's hundreds of cars that come through. The last update that I heard was that we're not only the largest food distribution for the Food Bank of the Rockies here in the Denver metro area, but we're also the largest food distribution site of the entire region. So that's a couple of different states. I want to say it's Colorado, Wyoming, and something else. And so we are able to do that because we have strong partnerships. The volunteers that you see in these images, you know, they've been coming for years, but sometimes when it gets cold out or when the pandemic hit, we really wanted to protect our older adults, our older volunteers, and we were able to rely on our partnerships with other organizations to help cover those needs. Something else that we're really involved in right now is education advocacy and building the capacity of the community there. Maricruz, do you want to talk about the work that you're doing with the parents right now?
También otra de las de los sombreros que me tengo que poner es la de madre. Siempre vivo aquí en esta comunidad y siempre estoy muy alerta de las cosas que pasan también alrededor de la educación de mis hijos y de otros niños también. Entonces, por ese hecho me di cuenta de lo que estaba pasando en la escuela de Montbello donde mis hijos atienden. Queríamos hacer, bueno, estamos en el proceso de reimaginar la escuela y qué es lo que y cómo se tendría que ver para la comunidad. Entonces hemos estado en conversaciones con DPS y muchos padres de familia nos hemos reunido y hemos tenido reuniones para platicar sobre eso. Específicamente para la comunidad latina es un poco difícil entrar a estos espacios porque muchas veces estamos en no tenemos tiempo, estamos trabajando, tenemos otras necesidades que tenemos que poner primero. Entonces, el hecho de que la escuela de sus hijos van a cambiar, pues eso es algo que es difícil, ¿verdad?, para atender. Así que, no sé, creo que hablé mucho. A ver, Mayra.
Perfecto. So Maricruz, as we had said earlier, you know, we wear different hats. Maricruz, first and foremost, she's a mother here in the Montbello community. Her children go to school here in the Montbello community, and that really has allowed her some insight to know what's happening in the area. Montbello High School, I don't know if any of you heard or know the history, but the high school was phased out and it shut down as the Montbello High School, a traditional high school, back in 2014 as well, and has since then reopened with various different charters living within its physical building over the years. Sometimes it's up to 5 different schools in one building, mixing high school students and middle school students. But Maricruz, because of her role as a mother at this school, she was able to find out the different processes that are happening right now. DPS is in the process of a reimagining, and something that she's able to do is organize and mobilize the parents so that they are aware of what is happening and so that they can vocalize their specific needs and their issues, and make sure that their voice is heard. And that's just one of the many things that we do and that she does in the community. The other project we wanted to mention. Go ahead, menciónalo.
Sí, quería mencionar algo que es importante para las personas que están en esta llamada. Quiero que enlacen como hablamos nosotros. No solamente es el trabajo que hacemos, vivimos, estamos aquí, somos parte de la comunidad, escuchamos las cosas que están pasando y traemos esas problemas o historias a la oficina y hablamos sobre eso. Decimos, eso es lo que pasa. No es solamente que estamos enfocadas en el trabajo en sí que estamos viendo, sino que estamos enfocados en lo que vivimos como también individuos. Creo que a veces, personalmente he notado que muchas organizaciones se deslindan de esos roles y solamente piensan solamente es mi trabajo, pero también es la comunidad, qué es lo que estás viviendo. Entonces creo que es algo importante de resaltar qué es lo que hacemos. Por eso el grupo de nosotros es un poquito diferente.
Yeah, so something that we really want to highlight and emphasize and have you all take note of is the way that we talk about our community engagement work and how we address the community. And so when we talk about community engagement, it's not in the sense that it's just a job for us. We are residents of the Montbello community. We live here. When we hear that something is happening, we don't walk away from it and we don't say, oh, well, this is just a job. Everything that we hear and we listen, we bring it back to the office and we discuss it. We can't just walk away from it and shut it out because it's something that our jobs don't entail. That is not the role that we play, and that is why community engagement and the work that we do is so different and sometimes different from what other organizations do. And that's because we're living the issues and we're experiencing the same issues that the community is experiencing, and it's something that we cannot look away from. And so it's something that we really choose to address and tackle head on and not ignore. And I think that that's one of the strengths of our group and the work that we do as MOC. We're all residents. Our board is comprised of residents. And so we just really wanted to call that out and highlight that and have folks, take note of that. Community engagement and organizing isn't just a job for us. It's something that we live day by day. And that will, take us to our next project. And it's something that we talk about daily, which is the Fresh Flow Hub. And for this, we wanted to highlight the different tactics that we use because community engagement is not a one-size-fits-all model. As I mentioned previously, community engagement has evolved and it has changed for us. We still use some of the same tactics. We still do some of the same mobilizing, and that fits the needs of a specific project. For this, it has been a little bit different. But the Montbello Fresh Flow project, we just wanted to highlight some of the work that we've been doing when it comes to engagement and making sure that people are engaged in those topics that sometimes aren't the most fun. Who wants to talk about land use? Who wants to talk about zoning? Who wants to talk about, like those boring aspects of easements and what goes into placemaking and just the technical side of things. What we do is we take that and we translate it in such a way that is digestible by the community, that they can understand, and then that they could see and feel and get excited about. And so we're asking for their feedback of what they would like to see in this space. We tackle it from a very personal one-on-one perspective. And I think that has allowed to become more successful in how we reach out to the community. We've also been able to use different tools. The pandemic, has really changed a lot of things where normally we would have met with folks in person. We would have been able to have, multiple community meetings, showed them renderings and together work on the projects and how this could look. We don't have that anymore because of the restrictions. And so we've had to rely on different tools like social media. Zoom has been great to really reach out to the community. For folks who might not be too familiar with like planning processes, if you are and if you aren't, those aren't the most fun meetings to attend. And if you have been to meetings in the past, you know that not a lot of residents attend these. we might be really lucky if 20 to 30 people show up and actually engage with us and provide feedback. For the most part, these processes are very underattended by community members. And now through COVID and us being able to reach people virtually, our meeting that we had for this, our public meeting, we were able to reach over, I think it was 18,000 people through a combination of Zoom, Facebook, and all of our different social media accounts. A lot of it was organic, but a lot of it was also just through sharing. People were engaging with us on Facebook. They were commenting as we were having the meeting. And the other thing that we found surprising was that people were returning to the videos to it with them and ask questions. A lot of folks messaging us directly to ask questions. And so just wanting to highlight that the use of different tools has been really exciting for us to reach different folks. We recently hosted the Montbello Alive annual celebration. Every year, a collaborative of organizations, we come together and we plan to host a community-wide celebration. It's usually the second week of September, and we would do this physically at the Montbello High School campus. This year, because of COVID, we weren't able to do that, and so we decided to host a hybrid event. We did social media again to reach out to the community, engage with them through video. We somehow figured out how to do live broadcasting, and we reached over 4,000 people throughout the day. As we went live, and we were able to talk about, the different things that we were working on as a community, but also just engage with them and have fun with them. We had different musical acts, different programming and videos, and we were able to share the work that our community partners are doing with them virtually. And that was really exciting for us. And so, starting to exercise the different technical tools and those technical muscles to reach folks virtually has been something that we've been working on even more and focusing on a lot more now that we're all kind of locked up at home and working from home.
Myra, quick question from Paul asking specifically about what online engagement tools were most useful. I know that you listed a bunch of tools, but curious to know if you all have any tools that you found most useful.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what we do and how we do it, Paul, and I don't know if that will help and be helpful, but if we have to host a community meeting, we'll host it in Zoom similar to what this is. And then we will share that directly to our YouTube, website, Facebook, and Instagram if we can do Instagram. We have a Snapchat account, and we start to look at different trends for different age demographics. I am not on Snapchat. I hate Snapchat, but I know that younger Zoomers are on Snapchat. And so Kiara is more in tune with that, and she posts that. And we somehow find that like our engagement reaches a lot of folks. She might post a flyer of the food bank, and a lot of these younger teenagers, high schoolers maybe, are sharing that with their parents, and we're reaching them. If we want to reach older adults, Facebook and Instagram, millennials up to our boomers, Facebook is a big thing. If I want my mom to know something, Facebook is a big tool. The other thing that we use, and I know Maricruz uses this a lot for her groups, is WhatsApp. We have texting trees, and you might have a huge WhatsApp group, and if something immediate needs to go out, we'll text it to the group, whether it's a flyer, a meeting invitation. We use that a lot more also with our Latino community. Texting and reaching folks directly is a big one. I'm going to move into other tactics that we use and community engagement and our specific model that if we start to brainstorm and think about it, what it looks like. But if we're reaching different demographics, we might use different tools. Definitely Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If we're trying to reach younger folks, Snapchat. email is still a really big one, especially for folks who are connected that way. And we know that we're missing folks, and so we have developed a way to make sure that we don't miss folks, and we'll talk about that here in a second.
Myra, sorry, one more question. So with the texting trees, are you using a particular program for that?
If we're trying to reach out to the Latino community, we're reaching out through WhatsApp.
Okay.
WhatsApp. And so, Maricruz, do you want to share the story around this little house?
Es una historia muy interesante. Como les mencionaba, nosotros usualmente hacemos muchas cosas también con familia. Me toca a veces llevar a mis hijos por ahora todo lo que está pasando en la epidemia y regresamos a la oficina y quiero tenerlos también. Quiero estar con ellos de una manera porque están estudiando online y quiero apoyarlos un poco. Entonces, a veces me los llevo a la oficina. En esta ocasión, mi hijo está en 6º grado. Tenía un problema de matemáticas y la casita que ustedes pueden ver ahí es el problema de matemáticas que tuvo mi hijo. Entonces estábamos teniendo una reunión normal entre nosotros. Cuando terminó, nos dijo mi hijo al grupo, nos dijo, ¿me pueden ayudar? No puedo hacer este problema. Esta era una casita, encontrar la área. Y Mayra le explicó de una manera perfecta. Kiara también trabajamos en este mismo problema. Las 3 agarramos la respuesta correcta, la que pensábamos nosotros que era la respuesta correcta, pero lo hicimos de una manera tan diferente las 3. Fue algo muy interesante de observar. Después mi hijo entregó la tarea y todos estábamos, bueno, ya lo hizo, está bien. Y recibo la noticia de mi hijo, mamá, las 3 se sacaron una F. Y yo, ¿cómo? Y luego me dice, sí, dice, no está bien como me explicaste. Y lo dije, pero te lo explicamos 3 diferentes maneras. Y luego me dijo, sí. Dice, pero la maestra dijo que no era así. Entonces me quedé y hablé rápidamente a Mayra y le dije, Mayra, ¿qué crees? Nos sacamos una F. Porque no solamente era la F de mi hijo, sino era la F también de nosotras. Entonces nos quedamos pensando, ¿pero por qué? Si debería estar la respuesta es correcta. Todos pensábamos que la respuesta es correcta. Lo chistoso era que no la habíamos hecho como la manera que la maestra quería. Y eso es una observación que queríamos dar para ustedes, cómo los sistemas trabajan. A veces, aunque tengamos la respuesta correcta, aunque lo hagamos hecho de diferentes maneras, a veces hasta el sistema nos dice, ¿saben qué? No lo pueden hacer así. Tiene que ser cambiado. Entonces, fue algo muy interesante que pasó en la oficina y mi hijo dijo, mamá, aunque la respuesta no sea correcta, yo sé que es correcta y me voy a quedar con eso. Y entonces yo me quedé con eso. Entonces esa es la historia de lo que pasó.
So we wanted to share this. I think it's a really funny story. But Maricruz, her children right now, as many other children around the country, they're at home doing schooling at home. And if you're a working professional, you don't always get to see and interact with your children. And something that we really value amongst our team is family and being able to be close with each other and engage with each other. And so it's not it's not uncommon to have Maricruz's children in our office. This particular day, her 6th grader was there at one of our meetings doing his homework off to the side. And, after we finished our meeting, he approached us and he said, I'm having a hard time with this geometry problem. I don't know how to calculate the area for this shape. It's a little house. It had numbers. Maricruz, Kiara, and I kind of took our scratch paper, and we tried to solve it. Some of us, had to Google the different formulas for, solving for the area of a triangle. But we each, came up with 3 very different ways to solve this problem. And we presented them to him and we said, hey, this is how we did it. You know, this is the answer that we got to, and we walked him through it. And we asked him, how did you do it? How would you do it? How did your teacher teach you? And we all came to the same conclusion. The area was 22. He goes home, and, you know, we all go home at the end of the day. Well, I get a call maybe 3 days later, and he's laughing. And he goes, Mayra, you all got an F. The teacher said you guys were wrong. And it was just really funny to us because we had 3 different approaches to this same problem, and we all got to the same solution. And at the end, when we asked, well, why did we get it wrong? It's because the teacher had taught him a very specific way to do it, and none of us did it that specific way, which meant he didn't do it that specific way, and so he got an F. And this to us is a reflection that, you know, we can approach our work very different ways, but if the system is set up to reward a very specific process, a very specific way of doing things, we might do the work differently and get to the right solution, but it might not be what is needed. And so we've taken that with us, and we've accepted our collective F, even though we knew that we had the right answer. But this was just a funny way for us to share that when we do community engagement, we approach it from very different ways. We approach it using different models and different tactics, different, you know, values. When I was saying, you know, we've created a safe way to make sure we don't miss anybody, community engagement, we sometimes adopt the tactics that promotoras will use. And so we'll have a team of folks who help us reach individuals one-on-one. You know, we've started to build the capacity of a team to help us do the work so that we can, you know, take and mold a Frankenstein of a model, you know, to just put that image, for how we can address the community for that specific project. Because it won't always be the right thing, and it won't always be what is needed, but it's the way that we have found to reach the most folks and engage them for the work that we need to do, and that needs to be done with the community. And so we just really wanted to share this story and say we all have different approaches, and we all do the work very differently, and similar to what your organizations and groups may do. Community engagement is not a one-size-fits-all model. You may all have different tactics and different ways of doing it. It might be one model across the board. You might pick and choose different things to fit your needs, but we really wanted to highlight that for us. It is, you know, picking and choosing. And sometimes we highlight very specific tactics, sometimes we go a completely different route. But at the end of the day, our model changes and it ebbs and flows depending on what we need to do, who we're trying to reach, and what our end goal is. We also know that because we come from different backgrounds and have different perspectives, the things that we value as we're working in the community might change. We also know that our own personal lives may alter the way that we see a problem as well. And we do a lot of self-assessment as a team. We talk about a lot of issues that are happening in the community, because community work is hard. And we, I don't think any of us will ever say that community work is easy. It is incredibly hard. And when you're tackling with systemic issues and other social issues, it gets really hard to do the work and to approach it in a way that feels uniform. And so there is a lot of flexibility that we value flexibility and the ability to, you know, change things sometimes in the middle of a process. Sometimes, you know, things get thrown at us like this pandemic, and we have to quickly reassess the way that we're doing things and change. And it all, you know, depends. And it's just a really, you know, it's an interesting way for us to work. No sé, Maricruz, si quieras decir algo más de eso.
No, lo dijiste muy bien, pero lo único que tendría que agregar es Nuestras diferencias a veces, quiero dar un ejemplo de lo que hacemos. A veces en la oficina podemos tener diferentes opiniones por de dónde venimos, quiénes somos, nuestra educación. Entonces a veces tenemos una variedad de opiniones tan diferentes que podemos discutirlo y está bien hacer eso. Creo que algunas organizaciones evitan esas conversaciones difíciles y pienso que lo que nos diferencia también es eso, que podemos tomar esa batuta y ir y hablarlo como lo sentimos y de una manera respetuosa, pero también de una manera de abierta a así tendremos que cambiar o así tenemos que poner nuestra opinión. Agradezco mucho, me gustaría que muchos de ustedes, no sé, ¿me oigo? ¿Me oyen bien?
Sí. So something that Maricruz wants to highlight is that we also not only have very different perspectives, a lot of, we have a lot of different lived experiences. We have very different educational backgrounds. There are so many things that have shaped us individually that when we come to the table together, we don't always agree. And something that we value a lot as part of our team is the fact that we can disagree and bring everything up for discussion, from how we address things to how an issue is interpreted and presented, and how we want to move forward. Sometimes they're really heated discussions. Sometimes, we get really loud. We have different personalities, but we're able to discuss things and feel passionate about them and still remain respectful of each other. And we're able to address things very openly. We might come in and, make the most passionate argument for the way that we feel something should be. And we accept, feedback, criticism, and we're always open to learning from each other and shifting our perspectives. And that's something that Maricruz really wanted us to highlight in this presentation.
La comida.
Oh my goodness, yes. And sometimes we get really upset and we get really hurt. But it's almost like clockwork at 1 o'clock or whatever time it is. We always go and get something to eat together because we've formed this little family. So we might have like a really heated discussion. Somebody might be really upset because, we're not going to do things the way they thought we should have done it. But we're able to make peace with that and move forward and commit to moving forward as a team. And we'll, reconciliate as a family by eating a meal together. And that's how we're able to work together. Our dynamic is very different, I feel, from many groups, but we've been able to form a team where we can understand where our different perspectives are. We can understand that we work very differently and move forward that way. The other thing that we really wanted to highlight for everybody is that our team has a lot of autonomy to do the work that we do, to engage the community in the way that we want to engage them, based on our team of 3, Kiara, Maricruz, and I. I don't know if we forgot to invite Donna. I don't know if she's here, but our executive director has afforded us that liberty to do the work we need to do. Of course, we have checks and balances within the organization, but our team is very, and our perspectives and our expertise are respected in that sense. She knows that we have the knowledge and the tools necessary to do the work that we need to do, and we aren't presented with different bureaucratic processes. There isn't a lot of red tape that we need to cross internally for us to do the work that we need to do. There is a lot of autonomy of our group and our team to engage and move forward with the community and as an organization as we see fit. the other thing that Donna would echo and say when we talk about community engagement is that it is something that is incredible. It's so valued in MOC and our organization, not just by our staff, but our board as well. And so we're given a lot of the power to do the work that we need to do. And they in turn, because they value it, they're able to budget for what it costs to do community engagement. And so that's something that we want to have a discussion with folks and open up to questions. But when we say we value community engagement, how does that value translate to the actions of the organization itself? We've heard horror stories of other organizations, and we really learn from that and try to make sure that we don't replicate those same issues. And when our organization says that they value community engagement, what does that value translate to for nonprofits, especially smaller ones, or when you're working on issues, or just the, nonprofit industrial complex? You're sometimes competing for money with your partner organizations. Sometimes, there isn't money from funders that goes directly to community organizing. And so you have to figure out where you're going to get that money from and how you're going to allocate it in a way that your funders see fit. And so when we talk about value, what does that value translate to? And how, one of the questions that we want to ask the team is, how is your organization addressing these same questions? Is your organization addressing these questions? How is your community organizing team, having these discussions? Are they having these discussions? And what support do they have, if any, to do the work that they need to do to move forward and to work in community? And so for the next, whatever time is available, we really wanted to enter into that discussion and answer questions, because it is a little hard to, present and talk about it. We want to know what questions you all have, and how we can support the work that you're doing. And if there are stories that we can share, or if there's a way that we can say, this is how we do it. These are the things that we use, similar to when we were answering Paul's question. We want the next couple of minutes to be that. So I'll stop sharing and really hope that we can have a discussion with you all.
Myra, I wanted to lift up a question that Mo had. Mo, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and share that. I think it'd be great for others to hear your voice.
Sure. Thank you so much, Myra and Maricruz. I appreciated what you shared about how you handle how you can have healthy disagreements within your team and how you work through those. And I'm curious what that looks like when you're in a community and not everyone wants the same thing or necessarily agrees on the next step, or have different priorities, because I think that's really challenging. We say the community often, and your community so well, but it's just such a broad term, and acknowledging that there often isn't consensus or like a unified voice there. How do you navigate those times? Are there any examples, or what has that looked like in Montbello?
Yeah, we try to engage and hear from as many voices as possible. I think that a lot of times, especially in planning processes, and I'll talk about that the most because that's where I do a lot of my work, is in city agency type of meetings and all of that. When we do our work at MOC, we try to reach out to as many voices as possible. Sometimes when we hear disagreements or that the community doesn't want something, from my experience and from what I've seen at these city meetings, it's only one person. And they're very lucky if maybe 5 residents showed up. And so we take the perspectives of these same 5 people as the voice of the entire community. And so something that we really focus on doing, and something that Maricruz pushes me so much on, is how are you reaching folks who you traditionally might not reach. Can you reach and she asked me, can you reach your mom on Facebook? And what are the different tools and avenues that we can use to reach as many folks as possible? And something that we do internally is if the majority of those 300 folks that we reached out to say a specific thing, then we are able to arm ourselves as the community engagement team and take that back to our executive director and take that back to our board. And sometimes it's not what they want to hear. But we're able to say we have the voices that we've collected of these 300 people. And so when we do community engagement, we're really trying to reach out to as many voices as possible because we know that our community is big. It's the last census in 2010, had us at like 34,000 people. And so we can't say, oh, these 5 people are going to dictate the future and the work that we do for the next, whatever time period for this entire community. And so we really try to get out to as many people as possible. And we use different vehicles. Something I forgot to mention was that Kiara, Maricruz, and I are weirdly like almost like influencers because we're on social media so much. And we use, the Facebook Live feature to broadcast different meetings and to make sure that people, one, know what's happening and that they let us know what they want to hear. And we'll use this for meetings that aren't even mock meetings. I've done this at like city meetings when we're talking about streets and how we're going to, I'm just thinking of the Peoria reimagining, like this street is going to have a bike lane and that means that you might lose a lane of traffic. Broadcast that to as many people as possible using facts. Something Maricruz and I are doing later today is, talking about voting, and we don't want to persuade people to vote any one way or another, but we want them to have the facts and we want them to have neutral information. And so we'll do that for the different things that we're working on. If it's a meeting for streets, if it's a meeting for voting, making sure that we're reaching out to as many people as possible and that we're gathering as many voices as possible so that we can then go make a case that this is what the community is saying and not just these 5 people. I don't know if that's helpful or not, Mo, but that's what we try to do, or at least that's what I'm thinking. I don't know, Maricruz, if you have any other, anything else to add.
No, lo dijiste muy bien. Creo que sí, siempre estamos así en esas conversaciones de tenemos que tener a más personas en esta conversación. Siempre, siempre, siempre. Como dijiste, esto no es solamente las 5 personas, sino que siempre están motivadas y están ahí queriendo hacer el cambio. Entiendo su pasión, pero también quiero abrirlo para más gente que usualmente no está en esas conversaciones. Es gente que a veces por una u otra razón no puede estar, pero lo que queremos es de que su voz sea escuchada. Entonces siempre nuestro lema es siempre que todos deben de ser escuchados.
Yeah, so just echoing that our goal is that we need to hear from as many people as possible, and we respect the voices of those passionate 5 that might show up to every meeting. And I feel like every community has their own small group of folks that show up to every single meeting. We respect those voices, but our motto in the office is we need to hear from more. We need to reach out to more. We need to get to more. We need to hear from more. And so we're always going to reach out to those folks who might not be able to attend a meeting because of the different barriers that there are to attending meetings. There might be time, there might be children, childcare. Right now, Zoom technology, some folks, might not be very savvy on using Zoom. I know I had to teach my mom how to use Zoom and she's still not quite there to attend meetings, even though I'll send them to her and I've already explained it to her. There's a lot of things that might be preventing people from getting engaged. And so we try to engage them using all of the different tools at our hands.
What other questions come up for people as we close out today?
I had a question, this is David from Denver Foundation, around race. I know that Montbello used to be mostly African-American community. And when Montbello Organizing Committee was still starting in a volunteer way, it was mostly a black and white organization. Can you talk a little bit about, some groups think that if they translate their flyers, they'll become a multiracial organization with Latinos, but instead, hiring Mayra, hiring Maricruz, you have a multiracial staff. So what was the process of really beginning to become an intentionally multiracial organization? And why not just translate your flyers?
We are a very introspective bunch of people who work at MOC. Maricruz and I and Kiara will sit together, and a lot of times with Donna, but it's mostly us three, who will sit together and we will talk about the race relations in our community. And as we mentioned earlier, it's not easy working in community. We're having to address different systemic issues that impact people very differently based on their specific race, their specific status. And so we have a lot of conversations about our own perspectives. Kiara, she's not here, but she is she's African American, and we talk about that, how the issues impact our communities very differently, and we're very open to our own limitations, our own struggles, our own biases, our own systemic issues, and the different, upbringings that we've had. We talk about anti-Blackness in the Latino community as a staff and how that plays out in the work that we do. We talk about, that sentiment of when the community flipped and those race relations in the community. We talk about the tensions that we feel in the community ourselves with our own neighbors. And we bring that to the forefront of what we do and how we do it. And that really informs our work. As you mentioned, when MOC first started, it was primarily African American and white. And there was a lot of introspection that went into that group of folks to really say, we are not reaching the Latino community. They had a couple Latinos, but they understood that the Latino community is very multifaceted. It is not a monolith. The Latinos that we had on the board at the time, were residents of Denver for generations. And the new Latinos in Montbello are immigrants. Most of them are immigrants. My parents are immigrants. Maricruz is an immigrant herself. And so we understood that we need to diversify our staff and our team to make sure that we're reaching out to as many folks as possible and they are seeing themselves reflected in this organization. Some of the conversations that we're having right now is about our own limitations and that we're not reaching out to the refugee community. We have a large African refugee community here in Montbello, and we're not reflecting that. And because of our own limitations, we're not reaching them. And we talk about that, and we're trying to come up with solutions to make sure that we are reflective of the community and that we're pushing ourselves to make sure that we reach out to them and that their voices are heard in the work that we're doing. But I think it takes a lot of introspection and a lot of commitment to do it. I think, when we talk about meeting the needs of Latinos, a lot of organizations, like you said, will just translate their materials. Well, we don't want to just translate materials. And I think it might be cheating because I'm an interpreter for the Community Language Co-op. And so I fully promote language justice and work that we're making sure that everybody can communicate in the language of their hearts. If we say that we're really a community organization, then we need to reflect that and make sure that people can engage with us in the language that they feel the most comfortable with and that we can respond as well. And so, yeah, I would say a lot of introspection. I think that we're realists, and we know that there are a lot of things that are impacting our community. And if we try to, como se dice en español, no le puedes tapar el ojo. How do you say? I can't remember, but you can't just like cover it up. You have to address it, and it's gonna come out one way or another. And we see it, we feel it, and it's conversations that we're having internally, and that sometimes we have to push our staff and our board to take on and to address.
Yeah.
We also have a book club, so we're reading. We're building up our own education internally. We're reading The Color of Law right now, and then we're moving on to The Color of Money later. Oh yeah, Maricruz has more. So really making sure that we're learning cross-culturally, and we're not, we don't think that we have all the answers. We're constantly learning, and we're constantly asking ourselves, what don't we know, and what do we need to do to get there? And then also, how do we become better accomplices of each other?
I love that. You're talking about being reflective practitioners of your work. I just want to acknowledge that it's 2:29, almost our stop time, but I don't want to stop this conversation. So I just want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you very much to Maricruz and Myra for the presentation, and of course for the work that you do. So thank you all. For those of you who have to leave to get to your next Zoom meeting, please, thank you for coming. And for those of you who still have questions, please feel free to stick around for just a bit.
Yeah, we're a long-winded group. Maricruz and I can talk forever. You want to hang out with us, we'll stay on as long as we need to. But I do want to say that I read these two questions. How has Save a Lot played out? When we talk about race relations in the question, in the community, we're super real with each other about it. When folks were opposing Save a Lot, they were opposing it for many reasons, but one of those reasons was because it was a grocery store tailored for the Latino community. And they didn't feel, and they didn't see themselves as part of that. And it is what it is. We acknowledge that, and we see that, and we know that. We heard those sentiments throughout the community, and we addressed them as they are, and as they came. I shop at Save a Lot sometimes. They've been a great community partner to Maricruz and I. Maricruz and I, for folks that don't know, we started a COVID response network where we were delivering groceries and care packages for folks each week, so that they didn't have to leave their homes during their isolation quarantine period. And that was with food, that was with PPE, household cleaning products, and personal hygiene products. And Save a Lot was one of those partners that would let us come and buy food in bulk. A lot of the folks that we were serving are Latino, and so we were able to get them food that is culturally responsive to them. And so, we have different perspectives, but that's one example that I can think of where we've worked with them and they've been a responsive partner to us. I saw another one about the community land trust situation, and my background is in community planning, and I have my own personal ideas about affordable housing, community land trusts, and all of that. The question has not been brought up to MOC. That's not something that we're tackling just yet. It's something that we're going to look into and look forward to having that discussion. Right now, the Fresh Flow project, the 96 units of affordable housing, they're all rental, and that's because of the complexity of this project. It's a lot. We're applying for LIHTC credits, we're applying for market tax credits, and for these different entities, this project is really complex. And so we weren't able to do any for sale units. I think that had we been able to, then we would have had those discussions and expanded that view. We're little still. We're still a really tiny organization. We're a staff of 5, and Maricruz is a consultant. I just joined on as a full-time employee in August. And so we have very limited capacity. And so I don't want to disappoint you and say that we don't have that answer yet, but we are thinking about that. And what our future as a grown-up organization will look like. But I do have my own personal feelings of it that comes from academia. I know Maricruz will have very personal, responses because of how she sees it playing out in the community. But I would say that when we address these questions, we address them in a very intentional way. And we try to look at as many different lenses as possible, something that we always keep at the forefront. And maybe it's because it's our identities, is how does this impact immigrants? Can people who are undocumented take advantage of this resource? And so we do try to ask those questions whenever we're addressing different problems, different issues.
Thank you, Myra. Mo, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. I feel like it's easier to ask live than to break it down into a chat. My question is, there are a lot of folks on this call who do a broader scope of work, whether it's sort of a broader geography or arts, well, most of it is just a broader geography outside of Montbello. And so I'm curious if you have any thoughts on, as an organization that is doing a higher, or provides a higher level service and supports, how can we best support and engage with local communities and community organizers? And I know it's, building trust and building those relationships. But I would love to hear from your perspective. I know that we can't all be organizers, but we really value that work and want to understand what is happening on the ground in these experiences. So where is that balance, and what thoughts do you have to share for some of those larger and broader organizations?
Maricruz, I don't know if you want to tackle that. Something I want to highlight to help answer that question is going to be a landscape assessment of community organizing organizations in Colorado. That is something that I helped prepare for the Colorado Trust. And that there's a lot of perspectives in there from organizations around the state that help answer that question. Because a lot of times, funders are statewide funders, and they're funding different organizations in different geographies. And there's a lot of different sentiments. Something I would say is that intentionality of how you approach community. And one, how you do it, and what you do after. Something that I remember encountering a lot when I was talking to folks was a lot of organizations that are not based in the geography that they are trying to address or support. They have a lot of unintended consequences, and one of them is pinning groups against each other. You might promise one group something and another group needs it, and so now they're kind of competing for the resource that you have brought in. And it's just an unintended consequence of having a resource that you're bringing into an area that has never had access to them. But Maricruz, I want you to jump in, and then I'll jump back in.
Pues yo pienso lo mismo igual, por mi experiencia, creo que es importante que organizaciones tengan a estas, bueno, yo trabajo mucho con el modelo de promotoras y creo mucho en ese modelo de trabajar con la comunidad uno a uno. Creo que si es algo que funciona mucho, es que haya esa conexión desde el principio. Entonces, al pesar de que fuera un lugar muy abierto, ¿verdad? O que quieras trabajar en un lugar en todo Denver, definitivamente se necesita apoyo de esas personas que son expertas qué es lo que está pasando y te pueden apoyar más para que en el trabajo que se esté haciendo. Eso es algo que lo he visto y que es muy, muy útil. Yo soy, para darle un ejemplo, yo soy la promotora que trabaja para MAC, pero yo voy y les digo a todas las muchachas decimos, entonces, ¿qué vamos a hacer? Y nos sentamos y pensamos qué vamos a hacer, pues entonces lo ponemos en la mesa y hacemos las cosas y trabajamos, pero porque trabajo aquí en Montbello, ¿verdad? Entonces si trabajaría en un lugar más amplio, pues igual se podría hacer. Así que eso es lo que yo pienso. I don't know.
No sé cómo
Deberíamos...
interpretar todo eso.
Yo pobrecita te dejé
But
ahí.
Maricruz was talking about. Sorry. Yeah, no, translating that is a little bit hard for me, and so I'm just gonna ask Maricruz to like repeat it in a very like in a more simplified way. Please, me lo simplificas.
Nada más con que yo pienso que deben de tener un equipo que tenga, así sea una promotora, navegadora, como lo quieran llamar, y que tenga una persona que trabaje con ella. Creo que eso sería algo que le ayudaría. Has pasado a la pregunta que dijo.
Okay, yeah. So Maricruz, from her perspective, you know, she does a lot of work as a promotora out here in Montbello. If something needs to happen, she'll go out to this team of promotoras and say, "Hey, this is the issue at hand." They'll sit down and they'll figure out a way to tackle it. I don't know if this will be helpful to you, Mo, but having dedicated staff that is their role to be in community, building those relationships, who you can go to and you know, say, hey, this is what we're needing to tackle. This is something that needs to happen. But it's folks whose goal it is to build relationships and do that work on behalf of either the organization or the position. I don't know. ¿Lo dije bien, Maricruz? Sí, que tenga un equipo. Que se dedique a eso. Yeah, to have a team that is their focus. To really and something that we didn't get to cover or mention, and I don't know how we would have brought this up but it's you know, you really need to build up your community engagement team, you know, and provide them the resources that they need to be able to do the work. It is something that we've identified and that we see from partner organizations sometimes, that we're able to do so much because we're able to dedicate our full time and attention to doing this work specifically, and we're able to get, I think, a lot further because of that. And sometimes when you're, you know, having to fulfill multiple roles and you don't have a community engagement team supporting you or backing you, it's just really hard to then do that. And if your role is to, you know, build relationships, it's a lot harder to build relationships as just one person as opposed to like a team of three. Like there's three of us that is our role. And, you know, our relationships are really different. It might be one same organization and our three relationships will be very different with that organization. And it's just, you know, sometimes I really don't want to go talk to somebody. And so I'll send Kiara to do it because I know that they have a better personal relationship. And so it's really, you know, that team effort and it's something that has worked really great for us.
Does anybody have any other questions before we do a quick little closeout with our small remaining group? Okay. For Maya and Mo and Paul, thank you for staying on. I would love to just hear from you all as a gift back to Maricruz and Myra, one thing that you've learned today. Or one takeaway, you know, one thing that's been lifted up for you. Maybe you haven't learned it or it's not new to you, but it's something that's been emphasized.
Something that has been emphasized to me is the necessity to speak up, because the work we do is part of a bigger picture. And I think sometimes I am willing to like compromise my own beliefs when that's not okay, especially when what I believe is for the greater good.
Thank you, Maya.
I personally appreciated all the different tactics that you've listed of, like, you know, even I think especially WhatsApp, because I've been trying to organize a co-op 80205 co-op training, and I realized really quickly that Eventbrite and Facebook were not reaching the audience we needed. And so that was a big tactical change, and I've had to like rethink that a little bit. So I mean, just hearing some of the on-the-ground stories and your approach, I think is really great. And I am so grateful that you're taking the time to share all of the lessons you've learned. So thank you.
I think for me, I've just heard a lot about community organizing in the last few months. I had always heard of it, but just really value that process and the passion behind it, that it really comes from the heart, and that there are ways to be effective, but it's not always like you were describing, Maricruz, with the problem solving. There's not just one way to do it. And I think I might have an opportunity to do a community organizing training. So I'm excited to kind of learn more about what that framework looks like, and just really appreciate your time and sharing with the rest of us what you do and its impact.
Thank you, everyone, for this. This was awesome to be together. I know I learned a lot. Maricruz and Myra, thank you for your time. And as you've heard many times, thank you for sharing your experience and your knowledge.
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting us. Can I react and maybe just share one story with Maya, just because I thought of it when you said, it's hard. Something that Maricruz and I do a lot is we get really hyped up about something. And then we're just like in the office really loud and really angry and really upset about something. And, sometimes it's very, let's not record this part. But we're really hyped up about something. And Maricruz